think fisheries and ocean ecosystems are in much greater trouble than is commonly appreciated. If we act in the relatively near future, we can turn some of those things around.
If we could get together, the regulators, the scientists, and the fishermen, I can't see why a solution can't be found. I just can't see why it can't happen.
This is not science fiction. It could be done quite straightforward. And everywhere it has been possible to break this cycle of despair, it has been possible to massively increase catches.
It really is very much up to us to decide. People shape the world. We can choose. There's a lot of potential to bring things back and have abundance and have beauty. And there's also a lot of risk right now.
As we enter the 21st century, we are at a crossroads. Whether or not we meet the challenges we face depends not only on fishermen and policymakers, but on each and every one of us, both as citizens and consumers.
My name's Sera Drevenak, and I work at the Marine Fish Conservation Network. I'm the Director of Policy and Outreach.
Okay.
And that means that one of my primary functions is to have conversations with members of the fishing public, fishermen, to make sure that their voices and concerns are heard, and we try to bring conservationists and fishermen together to solve fisheries problems.
What is the mission of the Marine Fish Conservation Network?
To solve fisheries issues in the United States through fishermen and conservation.
What do you do to support this mission?
So I lead our conversations with fishermen around the country, and I also keep track of the sort of nuts and bolts science issues in fisheries. It's a complicated little world of fisheries science, so I keep up with all of that.
With the rise in technology on boats, what do you see as the greatest obstacle to prevent overfishing?
That's such a good question. I think
it's hard.
I think the answer is in the question. So I think technology is one of the things that has created the overfishing situation that we have. I think that if everybody had to turn in their GPS units tomorrow, we wouldn't have overfishing. But, you know, we have what we have, and people aren't going to give up their fish finders. So because of that, everybody has to make other kinds of sacrifices. And I think it's hard to convince people to do that once they have been able to catch. If you've been catching 30 red snapper a day your whole life, it's hard to then come to you and say, sorry, you know, you can only have one now.
Right.
So I think the biggest challenge is that the benefits of regulation, the benefits of not fishing, are so far in the future that sometimes it's hard to have a real concept of what that means.
What do you believe the technology has helped to prevent overfishing and bycatch?
Yeah, so I think with bycatch is one area where technology really does help. So we can now catch shrimp that is pretty clean of bycatch. And 10 years ago, shrimp was terrible. You know, there were all these numbers 10 years ago of for every pound of shrimp we caught, there was 10 pounds of dead birds and sea turtles and other fish. And that's not really true now, and that's because of the TEDs and the birds, turtle excluder devices, and other bycatch reduction devices. And so that really helps. I also think, you know, the fish finders can be helpful because you can target better. And if you can target, if you're going out in Florida looking for snook, you can be a lot more careful and make sure that you're not setting on a bunch of yellowtail snapper that you're just going to throw over.
Right.
You can make sure you're finding the snook, before you throw your hook in.
What do you believe has been the greatest mistake in regulations in the past 50 years?
There have been so many mistakes, and I think the mistakes have gone both ways. I think sometimes we have we have allowed, in the past 50 years, so let me count backwards. I think, see if I want to get myself in trouble by answering that honestly. I think it was a mistake to set up fisheries management so that people with a financial interest in fisheries are the ones making the rules. It can work, and when it does work, it works really, really well. But it can also be very difficult. Somebody who, whether their children can go to college depends on how many fish they catch. They are not very likely to set conservative limits on those fish. And I think setting the management up that way was a mistake.
What do you think the most significant accomplishment in the regulation of the fish industry is in the past 10 years?
I think it's a huge...
Or 50 years. Or,
yeah.
Right?
I think it's a huge accomplishment to have... I think that right now is a difficult time in fisheries, partly because we do have very, very strict regulations at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, so 10 years from now, things are going to be much, much better. And right now it's very uncomfortable because a lot of things have been regulated very tightly. I think getting to this point has been a huge accomplishment, and it's taken a long time to do it.
What are your greatest concerns about the future of fishing?
I have a lot. I think one is that because our regulations have had to get so tight, I'm concerned that 10 years from now, there won't be docks left. There won't be public marinas. I'm afraid that a few people will own all of the access points, and it'll be hard to go fishing. But I'm also afraid that some species, especially ones that are managed jointly with other countries, like a bluefin tuna, that they'll be extinct. I think both of those things are possible. So walking that line is a tricky balancing act.
What are your thoughts on aquacultures with certain species?
So aquaculture can be great with some
Right.
species. Things that eat plants
Right.
are great. So I eat catfish a lot.
Right.
And then, you get into other things, and the technology for aquaculture is getting better all the time, and I really do hope we can get to a point where we can do more aquaculture safely. Right now we're not there yet, so I have a lot of concerns going forward about making sure that our aquaculture is safe environmentally and for human health. But I think we can do it.
Do you think there's any certain species we should stay away from doing that to?
I don't think so. I think that if we can figure out how to do it, I would hate to see a pelagic animal in the same way I don't personally like to see tigers in small cages. I would hate to see a bluefin tuna in a small cage because
right.
I think they're
fly.
unhappy, right? But I think we could do it. I know that there have been some bluefin tuna farming operations that have not been very successful, but I think that in the future they probably could be if they could figure some things out.
What governmental organization is the greatest ally to the MFCN, and why?
Well, definitely the National Marine Fisheries Service. So I know, your next question is which one is sort of...
Against.
Yeah, and it's the same.
Right.
And the National Marine Fisheries Service is, I guess, part of our role is to really make sure that they are doing their job well, and that they're doing their job in a way that doesn't alienate fishermen too much. So they're our biggest ally, and also we see a lot of problems with the way that the agency runs. So.
What do you think the solutions for fish conservation worldwide are? Like basics, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, and you said fish conservation?
Yeah, or marine life conservation, like basic things.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think for the ocean as a whole, I think that there are huge issues. I think overpopulation issues on small islands in the South Pacific and in the Caribbean, those are just issues that you can have the best fisheries rules on Earth, but if you continue to have building practices that allow runoff and global climate change at the rate that it's going on, rules about which fish you can catch are not going to help. So there are population issues, there are non-point source pollution issues, and global climate change that are already threatening, the marine ecosystems in a lot of the world. I'm from the Virgin Islands, and 90% of our reef system is dead.
Yeah.
So fisheries rules are not as important there as stopping the decline of the coral reef, and I think that's going on in a lot of places.
What do you think individuals and consumers can do every day to benefit fish conservation?
There's so much individuals can do, and I think the best thing you can do is to buy food conscientiously. And it's gotten very easy to do. A lot of grocery stores now only serve sustainable seafood. And the American pocketbook is possibly the greatest weapon on Earth to combat overfishing and other things like it. And I think that if we spend our money in conscientious ways, that changes the world pretty quickly.